Okay, let's begin. We are on page Yud Chet Amud Aleph. We are on page 18A4. Maybe you want to just close the door so that we don't get the echoes. Okay, 18A4. By the way, I had a great idea. So we have these books that we have from the summer alongside the regular books. So I just want to make a recommendation. Anytime you know you're going away, we have them here in the synagogue. They're in that closet. You could come pick up one of these. If you're on a business trip, you'll be away, you'll miss a couple classes. You could have one, or even if you know that you're going to miss a class, however long, just you can take one and keep it in your house so that we have these, the paperback ones, with you for any time you miss the class. These were donated as Refuah Shema for Chana Bat Sema Fega and Eliyahu Ben Ivan Chava, Leilun Mishpat Adel Bat Victoria. And these over here, these were dedicated, what's the name, Ray? Semach Gadloff and Raymond Shira. It should be Be'ezat Hashem a tremendous zechut for them. Okay, let's begin. So we are on page 18A3. 18A3, yes, right at the top. Okay. Now the Gemara is asking a question on what we already saw written from Rav and Shmuel. So if we go back, if you look back one little bit, just look in the column before, you see over here, Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel both say, Bela'az Yevani, that when the Mishnah says, Kara'a b'chol lashon, if you read it in any language, you did not fulfill your obligation, that refers to any other language. However, if you read it in the language of Yevani, of La'az Yevani, the ancient Greek language, then you fulfill your obligation if you read the Megillah in that language. And we already saw that the Megillah also needs to be written in that language. Otherwise, you're not reading it from Megillah, you're reading it by heart. So the Gemara says, Metve, let's ask a question. Kara'a Giftit, Ivrit, Ilamit, Madit, Yevanit. If the person read it in any of the following languages, Coptic, which is a religion that was in Egypt, you still have Coptic Egyptians. Ivrit over here does not mean Hebrew. Ivrit over here refers to the origin source for that name. So where does the word Ivrit come from? Avraham HaIvri comes from the other side of the river. So Ivrit meant the people from over there, okay? So Ivrit in this context is not talking about Hebrew because the Mishnah mentions that a person fulfills their obligation when they read it in Hebrew, no matter what language they speak. So if it's in Ivrit, Ilamit, that's from the place of Elam. Madit, for your Dead Poet Society fans. From Madit, from Madai, that's media. That's the country that preceded the Persians in the story of Purim. Yevanit, Greek, Lo Yatza. If he reads it in any of these languages, Lo Yatza, he did not fulfill his obligation. So one of the things that's mentioned over there is Yevanit, Greek. So you see, even in Greek, the Mishnah says Lo Yatza. The Gemara says, hold up, no, that's not what they were talking about. Ha lo damya, when Rav and Shmuel said you could read it in Greek, what did they mean? Ela leha, it's compared to this Braita. The Braita says, giftit legiftim. If you read it in Coptic for people who are from that place, Ivrit leivrim, Ilamit leilamim, Yevanit leyevanim, any language that you're reading it to that people, the people of that language, Yatzah, you fulfill your obligation. So therefore, Rav and Shmuel that said that you could read the Megillah in Yevanit, they meant only to people who were actually Yevanit. The Gemara is going to ask the obvious question though. Ihachi, if that's the case, that they meant when you speak that language, then you could read it in that language. I mean, it's wild. Do you ever think, imagine coming to synagogue and having them read the Megillah in English? Or imagine them reading the Megillah in Spanish. You know, it's wild, you know, but this is the halakha. It's not the ideal. Ideal is to read it in Hebrew and understand the Hebrew. But that would be the halakha, okay? So the Gemara says, Yachi, if so, Rav Shmuel, amay mukmila lematnita belaz yevanit. If they meant that you could read it in Greek if you speak Greek, so then why'd they only say Greek? You could do that in any language. Like the Mishnah just said, the Braita just said, giftit for giftim, yevanit for yevanim, ivrit for ivrim, ilamit for ilamim, etc., etc. So they could have said it in any language. The Gemara says, no, ela matnitan, our Mishnah kibraita, rules according to the Braita, the other Mishnaic type of statement. V'chi itmar, it goes according to the Braita. V'chi, that where the Braita says, like we just read, all languages are usable. V'chi itmar, the Rav Shmuel. When did Rav and Shmuel say that you could read it in Yevanit and you'll be yotzeh? Be'alma itmar. They said it in general. They weren't going off of the Mishnah. They were just giving you a halachic ruling. If you read it in Greek, you're yotzeh. Rav Shmuel, the Amitavayu, Rav and Shmuel both hold Laz Yevani Lakol Kasher. If you read it in ancient Greek, it's kosher for everyone. For someone who comes from Peru, for someone who comes from whatever, Zanzibar, it doesn't make a difference. Whether he understands it or not, it has the same classification, just like Hebrew. You fulfill your obligation to read the Megillah. How's your Hebrew? Mark, you understand what the guy's saying when he says the Megillah?
No.
How do you fulfill your obligation? Because Hebrew, you're yotzeh anyway. Same thing. Rav and Shmuel hold that when it comes to Greek, that's the same halakha. It's the same as Hebrew. The Gemara says v'hakatani, but the Mishnah actually says clearly Yevanit liYevanim. The Braita just ended off by saying Greeks are for the Greeks. So then how could it be that you're telling me that Greeks could be L'Kuli Alma, but L'Kuli Alma would seem not? The Gemara answers, Inu da'amur Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. They hold, according to the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that we said earlier, that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel argues on the Chachamim, and he said that Greek has the status of Hebrew, and just like Hebrew fulfills for everybody, Greek fulfills for everybody. Like we learned in the Mishnah, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Af Sfarim lo etiru shikatvu ele Yevanit. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion about Greek is not limited to the reading of the Megillah. When you're writing over all of the 24 books of the Torah, the books of Nach, so when you write those books of Nevi'im, Ketuvim, Yehoshua, Shoftim, Daniel, whatever the case might be, when you're writing those books are allowed to be written in no other language except for Greek, says Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So you see that this was a global opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel with regards to the status of ancient Greek. Af Sefarim, so also the books of the holy books, they were only allowed to be written in that language. So therefore, also over here, Rav and Shmuel was saying that if you listen to it in Greek, no matter if you understand it or not, like Hebrew, it's allowed. The Gemara asks, if that's the case, why did they say the halakha that way? That if you listen to it in Greek, you fulfill your obligation. They should have actually just said, this is not them making this up. It sounds like plagiarism. They're really just repeating what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel already said. So what should they say? They should say, halakha ki Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. We hold like that rabbi who says that thing that predated us, okay? They should say halakha ki Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that you could only write the books in Greek, and therefore I understand that Greek and Hebrew are on the same status. Answers the Gemara, genius. If they said that the halakha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that you could write Yehoshua in Greek, I would not know that halakha applies to Megillah. Why? I would have thought Hani milishar sefarim. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and the halakha following him is only true about the other books, any of the other 24 books. Megillah, but by Megillah, dichtiv ba, it says, kichtavam. It says that this book will be there, kichtavam, according to the way it's written. How did they write it initially? They wrote it initially in Hebrew. So you would think that kichtavam, that has to be written, like it says in the pasuk, according to the way it's written, would actually preclude or exclude you from writing it in Greek. Emalo, I would have thought not. Kamash malan, Rav and Shmuel are telling you, not only are they going that far as Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, you would have thought, but they're even going to a part that you may not have even thought existed, which is the reading and the writing, and the reading of the Megillah. The Gemara continues in quoting the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "V'halo es sheshama ashurit yatsa." Let's say someone who speaks another language. We just mentioned Mark, right? As an example, a person does not speak Hebrew. Sheshama ashurit yatsa. But if he hears it in Hebrew, he fulfills the obligation, even if he doesn't understand it. The Gemara says, 1 minute. Ve'ha lo yadak ma'ika amri. How can he fulfill his obligation? He has no idea what they're saying. Now let me just make this clear. What's really the Gemara asking? You don't understand what it means. Who said you have to understand?
The main mitzvah is to hear.
So why would you think that you have to understand? When I hear a shofar being blown, do I have to know all the intentions of the shofar? No, I just have to hear it. the Shmuah. So, right, you read the Megillah, I heard the Megillah. Why is the Gemara asking, but you don't know what it means? I think what the Gemara is asking is that the point of the reading the Megillah was Pirsumei Nisa, to spread the story of the miracle. If I have no idea in what way was the story of the miracle spread, just because I heard the Megillah read, if I didn't understand it. Okay? So maybe that's what's underlying the Gemara's question. That if you don't know, what do you mean? You don't know what it means. The Gemara answers, Midi dehava anashim ve'amei haaretz. The Gemara says it's similar to a case where there's women who never went to milamed, they never went to a yeshiva or whatever, or amei haaretz, or a person who's a farmer, regular worker, he never studied Torah, he doesn't know, still he fulfills his obligation in Hebrew, even though they don't understand it. So just like a person who doesn't understand Hebrew, who is from that country, but doesn't understand it or doesn't get it, that's also true if you're not from the country. So therefore the Gemara says that's the halakha, regardless of whether you understand it or not. The Gemara asks as follows, Matkif la Ravina asked a beautiful question. He said, 1 second, you're trying to prove it from the case of Nashim, ladies, and Amei Haaretz, who were not taught Hebrew, they did not learn the story, etc. So they don't understand. Atu anan ha'achshteranim b'nei haremachim miyadinan. You're telling me about them. What about us? There's a few words in the Megillah that we actually have no idea what they mean, because they're words used describing the language of the day, and we don't know what it means. It says that at the time, ha'achshteranim b'nei haremachim. That's what it says in the Megillah. And it's describing, I think it's a certain type of an animal that they were using to get to the location faster. But we don't know what it is. And still, since we don't know what those words mean, and you and I might be a rabbi, and I don't know what that means, because the Gemara doesn't know what it means. So therefore, there's no one who knows what the whole Megillah means. And still, you see that we all fulfill our obligation. If that's the case, I don't need to bring a proof from ladies and from Amei Haaretz that never learned the halakha, they never learned the story, they never learned Hebrew even, right? I could bring a proof from the biggest rabbi who doesn't know what ha'achshteranim b'nei haramachim means. Okay?
Sorry, Rabbi, when that's in the Megillah, on the English side, how does it read?
They give some sort of a general or broad answer, like a fast kind of a desert animal, some sort of a camel or a crossbreed of a horse or something like that they used to be able to get the royal proclamations to the distant provinces very quickly. But the exact species, we don't know what it is. So there are words in the Megillah that we cannot translate. So therefore, if everyone is Yotzei Megillah, obviously a person does not need to understand the words of the Megillah in order to get the point. Now, I always had a question on this. You know what my question is? If where the Gemara is coming from, when you need to understand the Megillah, is because Pirsumei Nisa, I get the story. Does it matter that I don't know which breed of camel it is? That's not, the miracle is not in the breed of camel that it was sent out on. So maybe that could be the answer. The fact that you don't understand something which has nothing to do with Pirsumei Nisa, what difference is it? You know, but here, right? Okay. Ela mitzvat kirya answers the Gemara. However, the Gemara says, mitzvat kirya Pirsumei Nisa. Rather, what is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is not about understanding the words. The mitzvah is about reading it and spreading the miracle. Hachanami, here too, mitzvat kirya u'Pirsumei Nisa. Over here too, even though you don't understand, Pirsumei Nisa is achieved. Why? And this is important. We mentioned this a while ago in one of the classes. Even though I might have thought that Megillah is Pirsumei Nisa, Megillah has two kinds of Pirsumei Nisa attached to it. One is, in reading the story, we publicize the miracle because we're all reading about the miracle. But the second thing is, the actual reading of it, even without us understanding it, would still be an action which does Pirsumei Nisa. So I explained, just like when we light the candles on Chanukah, it's also for Pirsumei Nisa. No one tells the story when the candle is lit in the window of Pirsumei Nisa. It's just lighting the candles. People look, they see something out of the ordinary. That out of the ordinary act spreads, because if people ask, then you could tell them, this is the story with the Greeks, they tried to kill us, you know, the Machashmonaim, the Maccabees, blah, 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 blah. So too with the reading of the Megillah, even without understanding it, I might not have the higher level of Pirsumei Nisa i.e. the understanding of the story from the Megillah, but I have the lower level of the publicity, which Pirsumei Nisa means publicizing the miracle just by the fact that people are reading something. Now this guy who doesn't understand what's going on turns to someone afterwards, he goes, what was that whole thing with the scroll in there that we just sat through for 25 minutes?
25.
It depends where you go, right?
Yeah.
Right? So in such a case, the guy's going to tell him, oh, well, the story, the guy trying to kill us, da-da-da. And then that starts the conversation of Pirsumei Nisa.
So the whole mitzvah that we're learning is that we have to hear the Megillah, right? So we learn, understand the story, and spread the story. So you're saying you're going to end up asking somebody and lighting the menorah, fulfilling it in a way like that. So what are you taking from the menorah?
I'm proving that there's a publicity of a miracle that happens by an action without anyone telling you anything. And the reason why that's important is because what happens after you publicize it is that people start asking questions. And then that's how they learn. Okay? The Gemara continues.
You say the same thing about Sukkot, even though it wasn't a miracle, but it's, you ask questions because it's in the public face when you're walking with lulav and etrog.
So it's interesting, because when it comes to lulav and etrog, doesn't say that we're doing that mitzvah in order to spread the miracle. An example of this might be, perhaps not necessarily for Pirsumei Nisa, but an example of this might be when it comes to the night of the Seder. So the Gemara says that we do things like not in an ordinary way. Why? Kidei sheyishalu atinokot. So you're dipping twice and you're leaning it. Why are you doing all these things? How come you're taking the ke'ara out in the middle of the Seder? How come you're doing this? How come you're doing that? The Gemara answers, Kidei sheyishalu atinokot, in order that the children should ask. Remember, the 4 sons ask questions on the night of the Seder. And the questions that they ask prompt an answer that then helps them learn the history of the story, okay? Why can't you just tell it to them? And the answer is because you cannot compare the impact when you're telling somebody something they never asked you about, because you don't care about that, to when you ask the question, you want to know the answer. So when someone comes genuinely curious, like I saw that they pulled out a scroll, it wasn't a Torah, we were doing it at night, what was that? The answer is, oh, this is the story, Esther, Haman, Achashverosh, etc. The Gemara says, Kare'a sirugin yatsa. Let's say a person read the Megillah not in a continuous flow. He read it in segments, okay? And we explained that like it was talking about a case of someone was like falling asleep, okay? The Gemara says, Lo havu yad Rabbanan my sirugin. The Chachamim did not know what sirugin means. It's funny, this one page of the Gemara has a lot of things that rabbis don't know, okay? So if every rabbi makes himself to be a know-it-all, just tell him, Rabbi, you have any good pshat on Yud Chet Amud Aleph Megillah? They don't know Achshtar B'nei Ranachim, right? We didn't know what sirugin meant, right? We didn't know what it means. We didn't know what it meant. Shema'ua le'amta debe Rabbi. One day they heard the maid servant, so the chedame of Rebbe, who's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the Ka'amru Rabbanan, she was saying to the rabbis, the Hava'ili Piski Lebe Rabbi, they were coming to Rebbe's house slowly but surely. Ad matai atem nichnasin sirugin. Until when are you going to come to the house? Sirugin, part. Okay, like not continuous, not connected, not in one contiguous group, if you will. Okay, so suddenly they realized that from the language of the maidservant in Rebbe's house, they learned the halakha, the understanding of what the word sirugin meant in the Mishnah. Okay? The Gemara continues. Lo haviyad Rabbanan. The rabbis did not know. My chalog logot. What is chalog logot? Look at the bottom for 1 second. Okay? It's where is it? Where is it here?
51.
No, I was trying to find. That's not okay. Anyway, I thought it was a Rashi I wanted to show you. Maybe it's later. Okay, they did not know what this word meant. Chalog logot. Shema'u la'amta de Rebbe. They heard as well. Again, this one. I don't know if it was this one or another one of the maid servants in Rebbe's house. The amra le la'u gavra. They said, this woman said to one of the men, "Da'avekame vader parpahine." the person who was putting out parpachine, I think it means some form of vegetation or flowers, okay? I never heard of how they translate it over here, okay? So they're putting out this, usually when Rashi brings you a word in another language, that word helps you. But he says over here, pickly. And I don't think Rebbe was ordering pickles. It wasn't Gus that turned up at Rebbe's house. But either way, okay? So they turned up. Okay, yeah, so that's what I wanted to show you, sorry. It wasn't chalog logot. It was, if you look at the bottom, you say Likutei Rashi at the bottom here. Likutei Rashi over here at the bottom, he gathers Rashi from all different places around the Gemara. You see over there, he says, Parpahine, Yerek, it's like a certain type of a grass or a plant, Shekorin Arukli, and Rashi calls it pickly, and it's probably in early French, because that's where Rashi was from, okay? So the point is that this person was coming and he was spreading this vegetation around in the house or in the property. She told him, Ad matai ata mefazer chalog logecha. How long are you going to run around here spreading out your chalog logot? What did that mean? Immediately they realized, oh my gosh, that's what chalog logot are. Okay, so the rabbis are learning halachot from the language, from the common chatter and prattle of the housemaid. The Gemara continues, Lo haviyad Rabbanan, rabbis did not know my salsela uturomimeka. They did not know what it meant in the pasuk. It says salseleha, right? Uturomimeka. So salseleha, they didn't know what that word was. Uturomimeka, that we know it means that will be Hashem will elevate she'll elevate you, so she'll lift you up. Shamu elam to the Rebbe. They heard the maidservant Rebbe's household saying, she said to a certain man, okay, the man was sitting there twisting his hair. Taltalim shchorim, right? He had black curls, or he had curls, okay? And he was curling his hair. Amra le, she said to him, Ad matai ata misalsel bisarcha. Until when are you going to be misalsel, which means to make curls or play with your hair? By the way, we have this language in a few places, this idea specifically. It says about Yosef HaSadik, right, when he was young, he was 17 years old. Rashi says on the spot, what does it mean, Vihu Na'ar, and he was a young man? Rashi says he was acting like a Na'ar. He was acting like a impetuous youth. What was he doing? He was misalsel b'sa'aro. He was playing with his hair. He was fixing his hair, okay? Brushing, but it sounds like more than brush, okay? So she said to him, like, how long are you playing with your hair? You know? So this salselea, which means that the person is curling, or that's what the language means. Now, if that's the case, so what does that mean? What does that word mean in the pasuk? Salseleha, right? Turn it over, uteromeka, and it shall exalt, and it shall lift you up, it shall exalt you. Salseleha means the same way the guy is turning around, curling the hair, turning. So too, what the Chachamim was saying was salseleha, turn the Torah over and over and over, right? Because the more you study it, the more you look at it from different angles, the more you play with it, so to speak. And I use that word specifically, right? The more you play with it, the more it will lift you up. Like the pasuk says, why am I using the word play? Because the pasuk says, Lule Toratecha sha'ashu'ai, if not for the fact that your Torah was sha'ashu'ai, this thing that I, like my plaything, okay? As avanti be'onya, I would have been lost already in my suffering. So you see that this idea of salseleha, to play with something, is a language that you could do, that you could apply to the Torah. And what that means is that when something is interesting or is exciting or is intriguing, so you play it round and round and round in your head. You have a story, you hear about the Shvatim, about the tribes, and you're like thinking to yourself, why would he do that? I don't understand. How could it be that Yitzchak loved Esav? Why didn't he see through it? How come Rivka loved Yaakov? What's going on? How come the brothers? What's going on with Yosef? What's going on with Cain and Hevel? I don't get it. How could Adam and Chava sin in the Garden of Eden? You know, it's like the classic meme. you had one job, right? You had one job. Don't eat from the Etz Hadat. You couldn't do the one thing that God asked from you. So when these things, they tease you, your mind, you're looking for new things each time, and then all of a sudden you get a new chidush. You're like, there's an excitement in it. That's the Lulei Toratecha Sha'ashu'ai. That's what they were missing in this word, Salseleha. Turn it over, curl it, play with it, and it will raise you up. The Gemara says, Lo haviyadu Rabbanan mai. The rabbis did not know what the word meant. Hashlech al Hashem Yehovecha. They did not know what the word Yehovecha means. Okay, it's not a very common word, that word, Yehovecha, so they didn't know what it was. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana said, Zimnacha, that one time, Have azilna behade ahutaya, I was going with a certain Arab, v'kadarina tuna, and I was carrying a heavy amount of weight. V'amali, and he said, Shkol yahavich ushadi agamlai, take your yahiv, okay, your Yehovecha, and ushde, and throw it on agamlai, on my camel. So you see that the word Yahovich or Yehovcha, which is in the pasuk, means your burden, that which you are carrying. Hashlech al Hashem Yehovcha. The end of that pasuk is V'hu yechalkelecha, and He will sustain you. It's one of the most beautiful pasukim, in my opinion, in all of Tanakh. Cast on Hashem your burden, and He will lift it for you. So many times a person is worried, is nervous, is anxious about something, and they're carrying this load, and it's so heavy to carry. Just take the load and just say to Hashem, I can't hold this. And give it to Him. Put it on Him. That's Hashlech al Hashem Yehovcha. The Gemara continues. Lo haviyad Rabbanan mai. The Rabbanan did not understand what the word meant. V'tetitia. Te-te-tia. Bimtate hashmed. And Rashi says, and I will tate, bimtate, right? Hashmed, destruction. Now, it's easy for us. You know why? Because in modern Hebrew, how do you say a broom? Metate. So if you lived in Israel for more than 5 minutes, you'd know what a metate is. Okay? If you lived in Israel for a long time, you know what lisalsel means. Okay? But that's because these words now became understood in the people. And I love the evolution of this, where there's a word that even the great scholars of Am Yisrael don't know what it means. And they only wind up understanding it because they hear handmaiden, right, of the, what's it called? The housemaid of Rebbe sharing that word in a normal context, or the Arab he's traveling with, right? Rabbi Bar Chana has a couple interesting stories when he travels with Arabs, okay? And he hears from the Arab that word, and all of a sudden he understands what it means. So now that word has become something which is commonly understood. However, Chachamim did not know what that pasuk meant, where Hashem said, I will be utetia, I will tete with mitate. What would that mean? The Gemara says, Shema'uha le'amta debe Rabbi. Again, they heard the housewife, the housemaid of Rebbe say, Dahavit Amra lechavrita. She said to her friend, Shkuli tatite, take this broom, v'tati beta, and sweep the house. So you see that word means, number one, it means a broom, and in its non-mem form, it means the verb of the noun. So the noun is mitate. The tate or tatete, like you said over there, would mean the act of brooming with a broom. Okay? So what is God saying? I will broom, so to speak, or sweep with a broom of destruction. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying in Yeshaya in the Pasuk. Okay? So let's continue. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan. Our rabbis taught us. Kara'a sirugin. If a person read the Megillah, not sirugin, remember, what did they learn from the housemaid of Rebbe? What did they learn that this means? It means that they were coming in groups. They weren't coming in all together. They were coming in a couple, then another couple, another couple. So it means when a person reads the Megillah, bit by bit, but not in one long stream. Yatsa, if you read it not continuously, Yatsa, you fulfilled your obligation. Serugin,
Continuously, but still in order.
still in order, yes. Sirugin, lo Yatsa. If you read it, Sirusin, Sirusin, lo Yatsa. But we are now on page Yud Chet Amud Bet, 18b1. Sirusin, if you read it out of order, lo Yatsa. So let's say I read chapter 1, then chapter 3, then chapter 2, then chapter 4. I don't know why I would do that, but let's say I did that, okay? I could imagine one scenario where a person would be reading and they would not realize, sometimes they have this in books, I don't know if you noticed this, that you find this sometimes in the Sidurim, on like Rosh Chodesh or something. You're supposed to read not here, down. You read here, and then you go back to the first side. So let's say a person, remember, you can read in Hebrew and not understand what you're saying. So imagine the person just read one whole side. That's a person who's reading Sirusin. So you read chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 3. Okay? Let's continue. The Gemara says, if he read it Sirusin, lo yatzah, he did not fulfill his obligation. Rav Muna, Amar Mishum Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Muna says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, af besirugin, even if a person read in bits and bobs, right? Not in one continuous flow. Im shahak kidei ligmor et kula chozer larosh. What happens if he waited between chapter 1 and chapter 2 long enough to finish the whole Megillah? Now we're back to how long does it take to finish the Megillah. But whatever the minimum amount of time it is to finish the Megillah, at that point, if you waited long enough to finish the whole Megillah, that's considered a hefsek, a break, and chozer larosh, you have to repeat the whole Megillah again, you have to go back to the beginning. I remember once that we had this. Once in my life. We had a Megillah reading in a very small apartment in Israel, okay? And maybe like a 1-bedroom apartment, and everyone crammed in because it was a very late Megillah reading, okay? In the middle of the Megillah reading, someone's kid soiled their diaper. What's the halakha? If there's a reach ra, terrible smell, you're not allowed to learn, you're not allowed to pray. So they changed the diaper as quickly as they could. He paused the Megillah, but the smell stayed in the room. They opened the windows, it was no air. The smell didn't dissipate. We had nowhere to go. So he's sitting there waiting, and he did not wait for a minute or two. It was a long time. So there's a scenario, as an example, where you're reading discontinuously. I mean, Baruch Hashem, we didn't wait 25 minutes. It wasn't that deadly. But let's go. Okay, says the Gemara. Amr Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef taught. Halacha ki Rav Muna. Sha'amar mishum Rav Yehuda. Rav Muna, who said in the name of Rav Yehuda that if you waited that long as a pause, then you have to go back to the beginning. Says the Gemara, Amar le'Abaya Rav Yosef. Abaya said to Rav Yosef, Kidei ligmor et kula. What does that mean? Depends on which minyan you go to. How long does that take? Me'echa dekai l'sefa. Does it mean, right? Does it mean where you're up to till the end? Or dilma miresha l'sefa. You just said, if you waited the amount of time it takes to finish the Megillah, then that's a break, and you have to start again. So let's go again. You did chapter 1, okay? Let's make it easier. You did chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you waited between chapter 5 and chapter 6. You waited a few minutes. A few minutes, no problem. How about if you waited, says Rav Muna, named Rav Yehuda, if you waited the amount of time where it would take you to finish the whole thing, then you have to start again. The amount of time to finish the whole thing from 5, 6, 7, 8, or does it mean from Aleph until the end? Great question, right? Gemara answers, by the way, I always love this. You know when you find the halakha, in the halakha, it just tells you, if you wait long enough to read the whole thing, from Aleph to the end, that was the question of the Gemara. That was the answer of the Gemara. That was, you see? So that creates the halachot that we get, in completed form, is from the conversation that took place in the Gemara, in the Batei Midrash of Chazal.
If you're one sentence away from finishing and you wait 2 sentences worth, then you're out?
Well, take a look. Says the Gemara. Amar le'Abaya Rabbi Yosef. Abaya said to Rabbi Yosef, Kidei ligmor et kula. What does it mean? Merka ayid l'sefa, or dil miresh l'sefa. Gemara says, Amale miresh l'sefa. From the beginning till the end. Im ken natata devarecha l'shiurin. If so, then you gave yourself this idea of amount of time, and it's always gonna, because I gave you chapter length. But what if the guy is 42 sentences in? How's he gonna know exactly? So each time, this amount of time that we said obligates you to start again is it's an ever-moving marker. So that's called natata devarecha lishiurim. You made your words be something that's not quantifiable. It's constantly being evaluated or quantified.
I think it still is variable.
Oh.
They should have said 30 minutes. It'd
Oh.
be easy for everyone.
Oh, first of all, there's no such thing as 30 minutes. They didn't have minutes in the Gemara.
Okay.
Because there's this whole concept of sha'ot zmaniyot.
Right,
So time itself in halakha is variable. That's the challenge.
They could have
Okay.
compared it to like a camel doing that. Like they always have.
They
Could have compared.
do
They could have
that, yeah,
compared it.
exactly.
They,
60 blinks of a horse.
yeah, I'm just saying, like they have these.
They do have these things. So that's the question you're asking. The question I thought you were going to ask is, Natat devarecha leshiurim, because now you said, no, it means from the beginning to the end. That's what it means. But even beginning to the end, I read one speed, you read another speed, another guy reads another speed. Right? So the variable is in how long it takes, every person to read. So how do we get out of that shiur? So I think what the Gemara is saying, that it's not natata devarecha leshiurim in terms of how long it takes to read, but in terms of how many pisukim it takes to finish this bit. So in other words, it's not, yes, there's a variable in how long it takes each reader to read that part, but at least there's a uniformity in how long we're talking about. So in other words, the whole thing. If not, it means it takes the time of 142 sentences. No, it takes the time of 98 sentences. It takes the time of 92. You see, each case is a shiurim. Not in how fast would it take to read that guy, that at least is uniform. You see? Because it's all the Pesukim. So that is at least a uniform thing. Okay. So the Gemara's answer is from the beginning till the end. Lima'aseh, how long is that amount of time? I don't know that there's a set time that the Gemara came out with on that amount. So it sounds like the Gemara is saying that a person would need to think for themselves or ascertain for themselves, does this seem like the amount of time that it would take to read the full Megillah? Maybe it's a matter of feeling. And I was thinking to myself that perhaps there's a specific reason why they did not give you that amount of time, okay? Is because what's the reason why discontinuous Megillah is not kosher? Because you lose the flow of the story. So how long is it till you lose the flow of the story when the person feels like, right, I need to go over the whole story again? See, like when you say start again, I don't remember anymore. It's too long. I don't remember. That, in other words, that amount of time, the time that it takes to say the whole story, perhaps is representative of the fact that at this point, we've lost any coherent storyline because there's the full time that it takes to tell the story already passed. But that's something that you would imagine in your own mind, and whatever time that feels like, you'd be right. Maybe that's what the halacha is coming out from this. Okay, Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav. Rabbi Abba said the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav. Halacha k'Rabbi Muna. The halacha is like Rabbi Muna. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, En halacha k'Rabbi Muna. Shmuel holds that the halacha is not like Rabbi Muna, that even if you wait longer than that, okay, you still don't have to start again. Besura, when it was in Surah, Surah was one of it's not Syria, that's Surya, okay? Surah was one of the epicenters of Torah in Bavel. Pumbedita, Naharda, okay? Besura matnuhachi. In Surah, that's how they learned. Bepumbedita matnuhachi. In Pumbedita, they taught the other way. Amar Rav Kana, Amar Rav Kana said according to Rav, in the name of Rav, halacha k'Rabbi Muna, according to Rabbi Muna. V'Shmuel Amar, en halacha k'Rabbi Muna. So in these two places, in Surah, the way that they said it was that Rabbi Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, in the name of Rav, halacha k'Rabbi Muna, and Shmuel said not. And when it came to Pumbedita, they didn't say it over in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav. They said it over in the name of Rav Kahana Amar Rav. So you see, I always love these like seemingly random, unimportant. Okay, the Gemara has to tell me that in this place they said it over in the name of this guy in the name of Rav, and in that place they said it over in the name of that guy in the name of Rav. Who cares? They both said it over in the name of Rav. And I always saw, and I remember reading this in the Pnei Yehoshua once in Baba Kama. When you see that, what the Gemara is trying to do is to remind you how exact they were with the Misorah, how precise they were with the lines, with the concepts that they were giving over. Who said what? How did they say it? When did they say it? Who said it to who? And that underpins and underscores the authenticity of all of the Gemara. Okay? I love that line. How you do anything is how you do everything.
That's how you learn. When you say a story, you have to say exactly who told
Oof. Wait till you hear a Briska tell a story. Okay.
That's Queen Esther and Mordechai. That's where you learn it from.
Oh, you mean that they said it over in the name of? No, but here we're talking about the precision in saying, I heard over Mordechai on Monday. No. Rav says, I heard it over on Tuesday. Who cares? The answer is, what do you mean? We were taught that I heard it on Tuesday. So say Tuesday, like that. Even though it might not make a halachic nafkamina, but the fact that we were sharing the precision of tells you it establishes the authenticity. Let's just finish this last piece and then we'll continue next on Thursday, B'ezras Hashem. The Gemara says, Rav Bibi, this is not the Rav Bibi that we know from Atlantic Beach, but Rav Bibi, matni ibcha. Rav Bibi taught the opposite. Rav Amar en halacha k'Rav. Now this, I have no problem with. Because here, we're learning the opposite halacha. That Rav said the halacha is not like Rav Muna, and Shmuel says halacha is like Rav Muna. So that makes a very important differential. Why? Can I give you an example? Let's say I have a different teaching of Shmuel that contradicts this teaching of Shmuel. Now we're learning all sorts of new halachot from why do you say it like this, why do you say it like that. It really makes a difference who said what. Also, another reason why it makes a difference who said what is because many times there are rules in a machloket between these two people. Who do we rule like? Do you understand? So in a scenario like that, you might have a situation where, as an example, we rule like Rabbi Akiva mechavero. Anytime you have a machlok between Rabbi Akiva and anyone else, we go with Rabbi Akiva. So let's say you have a difference of opinion. One opinion says Rabbi Akiva said yes, and the rabbi said no. Other opinion says no. Rabbi Yehuda says yes, and the rabbis say no. But it makes a huge difference. Well, actually not rabbis, because Rabbi Akiva is mechavero velo mechaverav, but not from his multiple friends. They're the majority. But if Rabbi Akiva versus Rabbi Yehuda, if it's one way, the halakha is that way. If it's the other way, the halakha is the other way. Okay. So Rav Bibi said that Rav says the halakha is not like Rav Muna, and Shmuel says the halakha is like Rav Muna. What's the end? What do we do? Rav Yosef said, Nekot de Rav Bibi biyadcha. Take the version, the opinion of Rav Bibi, who said that Rav said, En halakha ki Rav Muna, and Shmuel said, halacha is k'Rav Muna. Why? Because normally, whenever we find Shmuel as a dissenting opinion, it's because Shmuel took on the opinion of the Yachid, of the singular, of one opinion that was more stringent. And even though everyone else was more lenient, Shmuel was generally a stricter opinion of what's going on. So over here, Rav Bibi said the version that Shmuel is saying that you have to go back. And Rav is saying that you don't have to go back. In all the other versions, Shmuel is more lenient. It's kind of like if you would find a Bet Hillel being more strict than a Bet Shammai. Usually Bet Hillel is more lenient and Bet Shammai is more strict. So Rav Yosef is telling us that of all these versions, I would go with the version of Rav Bibi. Titanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Shomeret Yavam shekidesh achiv et achota. Okay, so let me just give you a very brief synopsis. What does Shomeret Yavam mean? Let's say a person is married to someone and they do not have children and the man dies. The halacha is there's a mitzvah of yibum, which means she remarries the brother of that person in order to be able to have a child and name it effectively after that dead brother so that he has a continuance in this world.
So Hunter Biden did. He was listening to us.
That's dan lekaf zechut, okay? But the point is, you continue the name of that person by marrying his the widow and continuing on, so to speak, his legacy. So shomeret yavam means someone who's waiting for yibum. So a woman who's waiting for yibum, and then shekish achiv et achota, and the brother, that brother who's supposed to marry her, then goes ahead and he gets engaged. He does a erusin, which is more than our traditional engagement. It was like 75% married. Okay.
And you need to get.
And well, yes, you do, but it's not full nisuin, but it's erusin. Like as an example, if someone was to commit adultery with an arusa, they would get the death penalty, nara murasa, because she's already like a married woman. Okay, so he now goes ahead and he's mikadesh. He did kiddushin on her sister. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Amru Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said, Omrim lo, they tell him, Hamten ad sheyaseh achicha gadol maaseh. Wait until you have an older brother, okay, that does either the yibum or the chalitza. Chalitza is where you tell the woman, I don't want to do the yibum, and they take off the shoe and they free her, so to speak, from this yibum before you carry on with this marriage, before you're with her.
Because if he gets in nisuin to the sister, then the widow is off limits to him.
Correct. And because he can't be married to two sisters, okay? So the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel says, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, even though the Chachamim argue and say that that's not a problem, but Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera says that we tell him he has to wait. So that's an example of Shmuel choosing a stringent view of an individual over a lenient view of the majority. So here too, when we're finding one opinion that says that Shmuel held that you must go back to the beginning, Choseh Larosh, that is more likely to be a Shmuel version than a Rav version. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. We'll continue on Thursday.